Okay, my name is Amy Croto, Senior Natural Resource Officer, Shellfish Constable, and Hearing Officer assigned to today's dog hearing. It is Friday, October 6, 2023 at 1:31 p.m. I'll read into the record the complaint dated September 22nd, 2023, letter sent to Kim Riley and Bruce Bowen of 37 Shamas Lane, Marston's Mills, Mass. 02648. Dear Ms. Riley and Mr. Bowen, I've scheduled a hearing under the provisions of Chapter 140, Section 157 of Mass General Laws on Friday, October 6, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. based on a complaint received regarding dogs harbored by you. The complaint states the dogs have excessive barking, which is in violation of the Town of Barnstable dog regulations, specifically Chapter 403-15. The hearing will take place at the Town Hall, 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. in the Selectmen's Conference Room on the second floor. You will be given every opportunity to be heard at this time. I request that you make every effort to attend this hearing. Sincerely, Mark S. Ells. This was delivered in hand by Animal Control Officer Cindy Sherman on September 28th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. to Mr. Bowen. At this time, I'm going to swear in any witnesses. Anyone planning on providing testimony, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you are about to give in this matter is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. So it looks like the complaint filed with the town offices came in on the 20th of September from Stephen Everett, 49 Shamas Way, Marston's Mills, regarding 6 barking dogs and boarders at 37 Shamas Lane. Facts as written by Mr. Everett state since 2016, there's been numerous barking incidents that occur at all hours of the day. They have had an illegal boarding of dogs that has disrupted our quality of life. At this time, we'll hear from Mr. Everett.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Everett, 49 Shamas Way, Marston's Mills. I'm here on a complaint for Kim Riley and Bruce Bowen on the dog nuisance. In 2015, they moved in here in the fall of 2015. She immediately told me, I've known Kim since 1981. We went to school together. She told me she was going to have a doggy daycare, and they were going to entertain, and they were going to make lilacs and everything else. And it came to fruition on the doggy daycare. The next summer, they'd probably already had a few. I went over for a cookout. They had a Great Dane on their premises. I asked them who's. They said it was a friend of ours. We're boarding it, and it's going to be here a month. That happened twice. He came the next summer also, but that doesn't exclude all the other dogs that were there. That's just an example. I don't know if you ever had a Great Dane next door. It's like an African lion. It shakes your whole house, and that was all hours of the day. That wasn't just the morning. That eventually came to fruition later. Then she told me, within a couple years of that, she gave me a name. She said, Charlotte Canzano, who I also know from Osterville, was leaving their beagle there. I know Charlotte's very nice. I haven't seen her in 30 years. She's married to Greg Hoffman, but I never got to speak to her. And I'd like to send the message, stop sending your dog to all these people. But moving on from that, there was also an incident with a golden retriever pup, about 6 months old. They had started transplanting trees and covering their fence with this green top, which I think was to, cover their doggy daycare. Well, one of the trees had stays in it. They had transplanted some white pines. They did a very good job. It's all filled in now. This is going back like 6 years. The dog, he got its legs twisted around the stay. I went out with my dogs and I heard the dog whimpering. I looked over. I can't reach it because I got bad hips. I can't jump the fence. So I tried calling her. She wouldn't answer the phone because she was obviously upset that I was questioning the doggy daycare. He eventually called me. She came out. She couldn't get the dog off the stay at first, so I went into my garage to get a cutting tool. When I came out, the dog was gone. She says, we're all set. At that point, she started saying we're minding dogs for friends, which I know is not the truth, and it just continued. One time I came out, at that time, I think they had 2 of their own dogs, and I don't mean to miss out on everything. I'm just trying not to take up your whole day. There were 10 to 12 dogs in the pen with their 2. So it was a total of 10 to 12 to 14 dogs at that time. I asked Bruce to come to the fence, which we usually did in a civil way, and I asked him, hey, Bruce, and he always deferred to her. He says, oh, she's getting greedy, or, I told her, or whatever it was. Well, it stopped for about 2 weeks. That's the other thing they do. They stop for 2 weeks, then it all starts up again. So that was just a quick thing. And then there was another incident where they They used to go on trips. They went to the Galapagos Island one time. I knew this because she posts a lot of that stuff on Facebook. What I did was, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up by a dog. It wasn't their dog. That's the other thing. You've learned that certain barks aren't their dogs. You know they're dogs when you live next door to them. This dog barked starting at 2 a.m. It didn't bark continuously. That's the worst part about it. You would fall asleep, and then it would start up again. They had someone minding their dogs on the Galapagos Islands. From 2 o'clock till 5:15, intermittently, these dogs were waking us up, which means we were almost falling asleep, and then we're getting up again. That's just one incident I want to tell you about. I texted her. She didn't even take responsibility. She said, we're not there. We're in the Galapagos Islands. Well, that's your responsibility. Your house, your dogs is always your responsibility. It doesn't change when you have some stranger or whoever come to the house. They also had this app that they were advertising on that they belonged to. They had a family from Vermont come down. Well, at 7 o'clock at night on a summer night, this dog, and it's not their dog, another border, a big dog, started barking in the backyard. It barked till 11:30. I called my neighbor, Kevin White, and I said, are you hearing that? And he goes, yeah, but Steve, I don't think they're coming back. He said, I think that's the family with the Vermont plates. And I said, yeah. And he said, looks like they were going out to dinner or something. So they didn't even care. They just came down on this app, great free Cape Cod vacation, leave the dog out, bother us. And that's what kills me, all these people who are bringing these dogs. And if Charlotte Canzano's involved, it's the whole Ostable Couture crowd. I know these people. I went to school with her. I probably know half the people that are dropping off. But they're going on vacations. We're the ones who have to suffer with these dogs every weekend. That's the other thing. I said, hey, can you take your dogs out on a leash until 8 o'clock in the morning, or at least 7 o'clock on the weekdays? They didn't listen to that. They had 6 dogs by then, and they were letting their dogs out at 5, quarter to 5, every weekend. We just said, and that was the whole thing, like, just let us sleep. But they wouldn't do it. They wanted their money, wanted their cake and eat it too. They took the money, and they didn't care a thing about us. That's the other thing they do. They separate the borders. You'll hear a dog barking out there in the afternoon for like 45 minutes. And it's a border, because you can tell by the barks that it's the border. And if the border, obviously, is under distress, he's at a new house, they don't care. They stick that dog out and let him bark at the neighborhood for hours. So that's what, there's just no respectable, no responsible actions from these people. And the other thing was with dog fights. There's been 3 or 4 good dog fights since they come in here. One of them was so bad, the dog was whelping for like 5 minutes after. And when we looked over, she was just flapping a sheet, a bed sheet, which I don't know enough about dogs to know if that's going to separate them or what, but there's been 3 or 4 really bad. And they started, I don't know if it's this dog, but it sounds like this dog, those Jinjus. There's a big white male, and if he's the dominant male, I don't know if they're telling these boarders that their dogs have been attacked, but they have been attacked, some of them. And what goes on in that house, when they go off to work and these dogs are barking all day off and on, I don't know what happens there. But I've also given you plenty of evidence. I've shown you the prices, everything. So this is all I got. But we don't deserve in our neighborhood to pay for our taxes to have these people who have Range Rovers, Mercedes, everything, drop their dogs off in my neighborhood. And they're going wherever they're going, Florida, Vail, Colorado. This is big money. And here's my family and my neighbors taking the brunt of this, being woken up at 4:30 in the morning, being woken up at 5 o'clock. And they only got 6 dogs because they want to hide the dogs. Don't give me this dog speech. And anything else I can answer, I will, but I've just had it. And it's just not, 8 years of this is just too much. Or 7 years, 7 or 8 years. And that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Mr. Bowen?
Well, Mr. Everett seems to have a very impassioned speech, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, sure you do.
May I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. Regarding the Galapagos incident, that was our dog. Our Jindo, named Althea, our pet sitter, left her out all night. We apologized to Mr. Everett. He chose not to accept that. We fired the pet sitter as soon as, when we were in the Galapagos, our ship sails between islands at night. We were very fortunate to be able to make this trip. He apparently could not count to 5, which is the number of dogs we had at the time, and he left one of them out all night. we sent, as soon as we got into port at 6 a.m., our phones blew up with the messages from Mr. Everett. So we addressed the issue immediately. We got Kim's sister and her cousin to go over, and the dog was already inside by that time. We were unable to reach the pet sitter who had gone to his daytime job. So we sent him a text and told him he didn't need to go back, just to pick up his stuff, and that my sister-in-law would stay with the dogs until we returned. So that was that incident. Regarding the other claims, perhaps you could refresh my memory on some of those. And he mentions evidence of pricing, etc. I have not seen that in the complaint. That was not shared with us.
Okay, so
Do you
just
have things
as,
like that there?
I do not in this file. No, that was something I was going to ask when we get to animal control and
Okay.
also to the police
Would
department, because
animal
that's not,
control have that?
that's not in the file that I have currently that was given to me for this hearing. So I've not seen any of this alleged evidence. So the incidences mentioned were that you had housed for 1 month periods of time over 1 year, and then the next year a Great Dane. That you had at one point in time watched a beagle for a friend for an extended period of time. The incident with a 6-month-old golden retriever getting caught up in the stays of a green tarp in the yard. That there were 10 to 12 dogs, potentially 14 in a pen at one point in time with the 2 dogs that you had owned at that time. The Galapagos Island incident, advertising on an app that attracted a family from Vermont that dropped off their dog, and then the dog was allowed to bark
The family
incessantly.
from Vermont actually are personal friends, and they stayed over the weekend while we were out of town and looked after our dogs. I don't know. I had not heard from them about any dog being left outside for an extended period of time, nor did we hear anything from Mr. Everett at that time regarding that incident.
Okay, so what you're essentially saying is that there are no founded barking complaints here?
Occasionally, our dogs will bark. We've asked the other neighbors if our dogs barking bothers them, and we have received a negative response on all occasions. We also have a document we'd like to put into evidence here from an abutting neighbor.
Do you mind if I say something?
Oh, I don't, darling.
We have 2 female dogs that do not get along, and there have been numerous fights between our 2 dogs, okay? The vet,
2 fights.
yeah, 2 fights. The dog, the golden in question, was my father's dog, was not a boarder, came over for a play date. All these things he's talking about with the boarding happened well before COVID. Nobody traveled during COVID. We gave up that. That was something I explored, getting a kennel license and doing it. I love dogs. Our 6 rescues came from horrible situations, 5 from Korea, 1 from the Bahamas. We've worked with them and their behavioral issues. None of the aggression between any of the dogs happened to any dogs that were coming over for a play date with us. They were between our own dogs, and we have to keep them separated 100% of the time. We didn't want to rehome them. Those were the fights he was hearing or seeing or whatever.
May I interject?
Yeah, it's
Oh, I was
collectively both of your turns
sort of
to
asking her.
speak, yeah.
And regarding dogs barking during the day when we're at work, we keep our windows shut. We have central air, and it's more comfortable for my 95-year-old mother who lives with us to have the windows shut and maintain a constant temperature. It's also more comfortable for the dogs. And so there is no barking heard outside of our house. Now, if you are the UPS driver, or the FedEx driver, or the Amazon driver, which seems to come to our house quite often, when they come up to the front porch, the dogs get very excited and they bark, but that noise cannot be heard beyond our front sidewalk.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. At this moment.
Okay. Animal Control Officer Charlie Lewis,
Why don't you
Cynthia
start? You want
Sherman.
me to go first? Yep. Okay. So this summer, while I was away on vacation, I believe is in August, is when most of the calls started coming in from Mr. Everett about the barking and the illegal boarding. I did address it as soon as I got back, and I did explain to Mr. Everett that we needed for him to call in when the incidents were occurring, when the barking was happening. Unfortunately, most of the incidents he was referring to was about boarding. I did speak with one person that he had given me a phone number for who denied that he was boarding. He said that his dog did go over for a play date. That was logged as well, and I was told that there was a history that I was not aware of. I didn't find any prior records, but of course, going back years ago would all be paper logs before the pandemic. Everything that we have in mooring info, and I want to say that's mostly I did see a posting that was a screenshot of a posting of something that was back from 2019, I believe, somewhere around the pandemic. But I haven't received anything else other than that.
For clarification purposes, the person that you spoke to is in this call to service log, Mr. McKenna, is that correct?
Mr. McKenna is the person who I was told had boarded his dog, but he denied that.
Okay. Charlie?
I would just state that the times that I have visited the neighborhood, I've not heard barking. It is a difficult area to assess barking from the pork chop lots. Mr. Everett's house, for instance, is directly behind Mr. Bowen's house. So from the street, you may not hear a lot of noise. I've attempted to monitor the traffic. That's been very difficult for the hours that we happen to be working. I would note that a lot of this has been, obviously, in Mr. Everett's statements, been ongoing for quite some time. We're kind of late to the party, if you will. Only recently haven't been made aware of these complaints, probably, I'll say, within the last year and a half. I only have a record of the 6 current dogs that are there, and apparently all rescue dogs. I was going to ask, how often do we rescue dogs?
Yeah, in over 3.5 years. We got 2 to start, and then 6 months later, we got another one. We always knew that the town allowed for 6. We didn't get them all at once. I fostered a couple of them. They decided to stay, and we're done. We have, my mother-in-law lives with us. She's 95. She's been with us 6 months. The dogs are wonderful with her. The last thing we want is another dog coming into the house. That's about all I can tell you.
Okay.
Would you
Right,
like to
and I would
submit this,
just
or did you want to keep
Further
that?
state
Well,
that
if you can read it, this is my wife's handwriting.
it's
That's the timeline of when we got our
Yeah,
dogs.
if you'd like to submit that.
when we encounter these type of situations, we generally don't hear anything about them until there's a complaint from a neighbor for noise violations or from someone that's actually having a dog taken care of by someone due to a fight or lack of medical that may have needed to be provided, etc. So to date, we have not had any calls like that.
Okay. So we've been given 2 pieces of testimony that are going to be added to the record, so I will read them in right now. Do you want me to make copies of these and then give them back to you after, or can we just have these for the file?
You can have those.
Okay. So Ms. Riley's handwriting, moved here September 2015 with one dog that passed away. Sausage? Is his
Yes.
name? Passed away February 2018. May of 2018, adopted Ginger and Riley.
Yes.
October 2018, adopted Kimchi. February 2019, adopted Aiko. March 2019, Althea. May 2020, Winnie. February 2021, what does Kimchi to?
My mother adopted Kimchi.
Okay,
the Shih
to
Tzu.
moms. Okay, yep. And then December of 2022, you got Penny. And then this is email dated October 5th, 2023, 8:19 a.m. Nuisance complaint from Stephen Everett. We understand your neighbor has filed a complaint against you and your dogs. We live in this same area. While all dogs bark sometimes, we almost never hear your dogs. Steve's 2 little dogs, while never outside with him, constantly bark at everyone on the Farmersville Trail that runs behind our homes when they are out. The trail is heavily used, and so we hear them barking all the time. All dogs bark sometimes, so we have never complained to him or even considered filing a complaint. It's very disappointing that he's decided to file against you and your dogs, who are all rescues in such a loving home, and as stated above, never disturb us. We lived here for 25 years. The only disturbances are his 2 dogs and 1 large dog somewhere up Race Lane that is sometimes left outside after dark and clearly doesn't like it. So it's not that we can't hear dogs in our house, we just never hear your dogs. We know them and what they sound like, and they're not the ones making the noise in this neighborhood. I'm assuming this person wanted to remain anonymous as their name is.
Forward if
Blacked
if
out?
needed, but she emailed that to me. I didn't want.
Today would have been the point for her to come forward to be heard, so.
Okay. Well, I didn't make it up.
Yeah, no, I'm just stating that, there's
I don't want
no,
anyone to be on his bad side. like
anyone
we are.
attributed
It's no fun to
to-
be here.
to
Yeah,
this.
it's- She's already piping in, so please
Yep.
keep order.
Everybody, please stop, okay? So we're gonna move on next
Can I have a question on
to,
that?
it's not your turn, sir. Officer Kelsey?
All right. Just from what you just read into the record, I'm just going to throw this out there. I do have one question to that, and I know you can't answer it. It's just an observation. I found it interesting that the person wrote that she never hears your dogs, or he never hears your dogs, but knows what your dogs sound like. That sort of doesn't make any sense to me.
We walked together in the
Okay.
woods. We walked together
All
in the
right.
woods. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Officer Chris Kelsey. I am a patrol officer with the Barnstable Police Department assigned to the Consumer Affairs Division. On August 23rd, I was contacted by Chief Sonnabend and asked me to get in touch with Deputy Chief Chalice concerning complaints that we had received about dogs and possible boarding at 37 Seamus in Marston's Mills. At that time, I spoke with the deputy and was filled in a little bit, and she asked me to provide support to natural resources, specifically animal control, in any sort of investigative purposes that I could, which I have. I contacted Director Nina, and we had a conversation, as well as speaking with Robin Anderson from zoning from the town. We sat together, went through what the town's rules and regulations were, what some of the state laws were. What I discovered and asked questions on was, and you would know better than I, it seemed like there was a little bit of a discrepancy between the state law and the town's rules concerning how many dogs can be on property. I believe, if I remember correctly, the state says 4, but the town of Barnstable allows 6. Okay. From there, I started talking to Mr. Everett. I also did talk with Mr. McKenna myself, as well as another neighbor. Unless you absolutely need the other neighbor's name, I would keep that
That's fine.
quiet for right now.
Sure.
When I spoke with Mr. Everett, he explained pretty much what he explained to everyone here at the table today, so I'm not going to go into that over again. When I spoke with Mr. McKenna, he stated that he does not board his dogs there, that he does bring the dogs there for play dates, and from time to time, he has dropped off his dogs there when there's been an emergency situation and they needed to be cared for. He said that he and Miss Riley had known each other for many years, and that is the extent of their interaction with, in regard to the dogs. He did believe that other dogs may go there from time to time for play dates, but he said he has never exchanged money, and he's not aware of anybody else who has exchanged money for those services of pet care.
Okay.
Nina and I did pay a visit to 37 Seamus. There was nobody home. We both left our business cards. I did speak with Mr. Bowen on the telephone after that and asked him if they were boarding dogs, if they were doing a doggy daycare, anything like that. He said that they were not. I did, through my research, find that there were some social media posts about doggy daycare and pet sitting. I will say that they probably were a little bit old. I couldn't find anything recently, but this information was brought to my attention, and it was also forwarded to zoning, inspectional services, which is Robin Anderson. I asked him about that, and his answer to me was he's not on social media. I said, all right, well, your wife posted this. Do you know anything about that? He said that he does not know anything about that. And I said, well, if your wife was running a doggy daycare in your home, wouldn't you know that? And he said, my wife tells me what I need to know. That was the answer I got from him concerning the social media. I did speak with another neighbor who lives close by, and that neighbor said that he believes that there is some sort of pet sitting or doggy daycare or kenneling going on there. I believe that it's happened for 2 to 3 years at least. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong line here. He said several years. He said it is usually busy on Friday mornings with 2 to 3 dogs being dropped off on a regular basis on Friday mornings. I said that is consistent. He did mention that anytime someone goes to the house, there is a chorus of dogs, which can be unsettling for the peace in the neighborhood. He said that it actually has gotten so bad that with their dogs outside and barking and doing whatever they were doing, that he and his wife have had to go inside because they cannot enjoy the peace and quiet of their yard. And I think, yeah, so people back and forth on a regular basis, dropping off dogs continually on Friday mornings, 2 to 3 dogs per Friday morning. Yeah, so that's pretty much the statement that I got from that neighbor. I followed up with inspectional services and with Nina, and she explained what the process would have to be, which this is where we are,
Which is where we are right now.
and was just waiting for the hearing.
All right. Mr. Everett, you had something to add?
Yeah, just from the evidence he submitted, I don't know who the neighbor is. I have a pretty good idea. I am out there constantly with my dogs. I have an underground fence, dog watch. I have hawks. I have fishy cats. I have coyotes right on my tree line, as Charlie will tell you. They're never out there alone. My little dog, the female, has been dive bombed by red hawks. He actually sent me a text warning me 5 years ago. We actually had a somewhat of a, reasonable neighborhood agreement back in the day. And he knows that I'm not out there alone. They know I'm not out there. I'm always out there with my dogs. I'm always out there when they're throwing, but anyway. But I would like to know who the neighbor is, since it is a public forum, if that's possible. And it shouldn't be put into evidence if they're not going to show their name.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't realize that it was just a...
And if it's the neighbor I'm thinking of, the dog's got a PCI bite of like 550, and she leaves it off leash. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean-
another thing, but that'll come up if that comes
So
up.
this wouldn't go into any form of hearing recommendation
Okay,
because it's
thank you.
basically just writing on a piece of paper that's not attributed to
Thank you.
any person. And
And-
that person's not here to speak to this
I
at
understand.
all.
And she was referencing some kind of, I don't want anybody to be at Steve Everett's bad side. They're just adding, they're trying to paint a picture. I've never threatened them. I have never done anything to them. She added that on camera, so I'm answering that on
Yep,
camera.
That's fine. I
Thank
just
you.
want to make it very clear that none of that is relevant to this hearing because this
Yes.
is a dog hearing.
Okay, well, if
So
you let her say it, now
neighbor
I'm
to
gonna say it.
neighbor relations.
I got you.
have
I
no
gotcha.
bearing on excessive barking complaints.
All right, well, I still answered her, okay?
Right.
Do you have
I-
anything else to add?
Not this time, until it goes around the table.
All right. I'd like to add one more thing in.
Okay.
I have gone out as well to monitor the neighborhood, and I just think it's fair to put in there that at none of the times that I've been out there, I've not heard the dogs from 37 Seamus, and I've not heard Mr. Everett's dogs. I've not heard any dogs.
Okay.
Could I see that list that Ms. Riley had put together one more time, please?
Mr. Bowen, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
This
I
this
would
dog
like
here.
to know
So,
who the
One,
couple,
2, 3.
I'm not going to share that at this time. And to give an explanation for that, these types of situations historically can get contentious in the neighborhood,
Kimchi.
and I don't want to further any tensions that are in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, and that's why I, at least with my notes, I am not giving that up unless I am
Okay, so there's
compelled to do so by the hearing officer. If the hearing officer does need that information, I have it, and I'm very willing to provide it to her.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
As Steve said, we used to be friendly. He changed when he got 2 dogs.
I want to just stop you right there. Does this have anything to do with the barking dog complaint?
Yes.
Or is this specific to neighbor
No,
relations?
His dogs bark an inordinate amount, okay? I have tapes of them. Yesterday, he had a new roof put on. My dogs never barked through the whole thing. There was so much construction going on, loud, loud, loud. His dogs barked the entire time. My dogs did not bark, okay? If they don't bark for something like that, they don't bark on a consistent basis. He's exaggerating.
Okay. I will say that, with what I was given for this hearing, we don't have any citations that were issued for excessive barking at either property, and we don't have even any verbal warnings issued at either property for excessive barking. We don't have a history of either party calling our department to report excessive barking over these, 8 years that this issue has been occurring. So it's very hard to found any of this. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I was observing the natural resources officers here, counting the number of dogs on that list. And yes, there are 7, but Kimchi does not live with us anymore. My mother-in-law confiscated her.
So Kimchi is not there.
Kimchi is no longer there. She lives at my mother-in-law's in Osterville. Kimchi always wanted to be the only lap dog. And with 5 others, we didn't have that option for her. So she lives in perpetual spa bliss at my mother-in-law's, and she's very happy there. We get to see her once or twice a week, but she is my mother-in-law's dog.
Thank you.
She's not ours.
And your mother-in-law resides in Osterville?
She does.
Is Kimchi licensed to her at that address?
Is. And insured by her.
Okay.
And she's still a spicy little cabbage.
I'm probably prepared to offer that a reasonable order of conditions would be that no more than 6 dogs be permitted on the property at any given time, and solely owned by Mr. and Mrs. Bond. No visitors, no daycare, no dog,
Play dates.
yeah.
Understood.
No, I think that that's reasonable. I agree.
I have no further comments.
Okay. Mr. Everett?
You mentioned the little balls. Like I said, I knew her. I didn't call for at least 5 or 6 years trying to be the good neighbor, okay? These people have made numerous amounts of cash, and I'm the one suffering for it. I'm the one who's getting woken up every weekend. My family, my daughter starting at 8 years old was woken up by these dogs. We put up with them for a long time. So this little picture they're painting of me and my dogs is incorrect. I have 2 Jack Russells. They bark. They don't bark for more than 10 minutes because I'm out all the time with them, probably 4 or 5 times a day. We got bikers and walkers going by. They're my dogs. I tell them to be quiet. I leash my dogs before 8 o'clock. I leash my dogs after 8 o'clock, and I keep them quiet on the leash. They had 6 dogs. Wake up. How are you going to leash 6 dogs if you're going to be a responsible dog owner? You can't. So the neighborhood suffers. I don't care about any of the other neighbors now, just the ones who actually see the big picture here. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, so I will just say, dogs are not required to be leashed when on their own property unless there is a
understand.
town manager
Yep.
order requiring such.
Yes.
So you choosing to leash your dogs on your property is your
Yes.
choice.
Responsible.
It is not
the word.
required.
Okay, responsible.
I want you to check your tone, sir.
I am checking my tone. I'm looking right at you.
So at this point, I don't believe we're going to get any further in terms of any actual evidence being given. Again, the department, I understand you've had these issues for a number of years, but the department has no record of it.
I understand
The
that, but I'm
reason there
clarifying that.
is an animal control department is so that when these complaints come in,
Okay.
there's a log of that and then
But
a
can I-
record of such. Without such record, all we can act on is testimonies given here today and what we have observed in reports that have been filed since the complaints have started coming in. So at this point, if nobody else has anything to add
I
to,
do have something to add.
okay?
How are we going to enforce this? If they're not allowed to have anybody but the 6 dogs? That's the next big question, because they've been quiet for 2 or 3 weeks because he spoke to them or you spoke to them. But that'll continue. And that's another issue, I understand that. But how do you enforce that ruling?
So after a town manager hearing takes place, a recommendation is made to the town manager.
Okay,
The town manager reviews that recommendation. He then decides whether or not to issue a town manager order.
okay,
Once the town manager order is issued, it is delivered in hand to, in this case, it would be Mr. Bowen and Ms. Riley. That states very clearly the conditions, orders of conditions of that order. Any violation of those is subsequently finable on a scale, I believe, or is it $100 every time, or it's, yeah. And then if continued abuse against the town manager order happens, then an additional hearing can take place.
okay.
And then from there, more orders are created that are stricter potentially than the first order if it's not complied with. Historically, in my years as a hearing officer, I've only had 2 instances in which an additional hearing was needed.
Let's hope so.
Okay, so at this time, 2:09, I will close this hearing. Again, recommendation will be forwarded to the town manager. He will review it, we'll draft up an order, and then you can expect to see that within usually 10 business days, bearing in mind that we have a holiday weekend. Okay, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.